I have been a fan of Salerno for such a long time. I used to live here in the city itself for 4 years, and now I'm back living in the province. And I've got to be honest with you, this city is special. I want to do this video today to show you the reasons why you should consider moving to Salerno, because it's up and coming as a holiday destination. In fact, Skyscanner named it its 2026 top trending destination, but it's even more special if you decide to live here. So if you're thinking of somewhere to live in Italy, this video might help to inspire you and show you that Salerno could be a very good choice. Let's begin with the Lungomare. The Lungomare in Salerno is probably one of my favourite places. It stretches around 2 kilometres long from the train station down to Santa Teresa, which is the city beach. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful place to be. There is plenty of seating for you to enjoy the views across the sea or under the shade of the trees that you'll find along the route. There are plenty of bars where you can stop and have a drink or a coffee. But it's just a really nice place, and you find that in really good weather, this place is filled with people relaxing, walking their dogs, exercising, riding their bikes. You'll often find local events and pop-up activities that feature along the Lungomare as well. I think living by the sea adds a whole other dimension to your life, and having this space where you can come for a walk and just to have this on your doorstep is a really, really special thing. Now, I will say, the sea, however, isn't the best. The quality of the sea is very much affected by the port that we have here in Salerno, and so you will find that some days the sea quality is not as nice. As such, you'll find that the locals don't tend to frequent the beaches as much here. You'll find that people will go to the beaches here, especially further south along Pastana and Torrione, where the beaches open out a bit more, but it's not a beach destination, which in a way could be a blessing because beach destinations tend to be overrun with tourists. So I feel like it's a shame on one hand, but it's also perhaps a good thing on the other. Another thing I really love about Salerno is how clean it is as a city. Now, I feel like I should say that the city centres in any part of Italy are always going to be the cleanest and most pristine places that you come across. However, even though there are some neighbourhoods in Salerno which, may have some problems with rubbish and dirt, on a whole, as a city, it is clean. And let me tell you, that has such a huge impact on your well-being. Coming from Palermo, where in the neighbourhoods of Palermo, they were really not very clean at all. And I would see mountains of rubbish pile up every single summer. To back to Salerno has really shown me how much your environment impacts you. And so I really think the cleanliness of where you live should be a really high priority when you're considering where to move to in Italy. Running adjacent to the Lungomare in Salerno is Via Roma. Now, Via Roma is a lively place of an evening. There are plenty of bars and restaurants and things to do along here. I will say, though, that a lot of the restaurants along Via Roma are very touristy, and as such, they are places that I haven't really been to the entire time that I've lived here. If you want to know what restaurants are the best ones to go to along Via Roma, because there are some good ones, and also in general in Salerno, then I suggest you check out my Insider's Travel Guide to Salerno. I'll pop a link below in the show notes and also above in this video, because it will show you exactly where the hidden gems are in this city so that you can really explore it at its heart and soul. I will say along Via Roma that of an evening especially, it gets very, very busy with traffic. Probably I would say it's one of the things that lets Salerno down is the traffic here. Not only can it be a nightmare to park, it can be crazy to find kind of on-street parking in Salerno, but just the traffic gets crazy as well because there is one central ring road that connects the entire city. So if there are any problems, the traffic backs up into the centre, and also because everybody decides to come into the centre on a Saturday evening, for example, it can usually get quite chaotic and noisy. So I will say that's probably one downside to living in Salerno city itself. Also along Via Roma as well, you will come across lots of government buildings. This is where you'll find the Comune offices, the Questura, the immigration office. So if you have to deal with any immigration matters, they're pretty easy to reach because they are right in the centre itself. Any of the other offices like the Tari office, the residency office, unfortunately they are situated outside of the main centre, but at least for any immigration matters, everything is pretty easy to reach. At the end of Via Roma, you will come across Villa Comunale. This is the city park and it is absolutely spectacular. Living in a city with greenery makes such a difference. In Salerno, there are lots of different green spaces. This is Villa Comunale, which is the city park, and it is beautiful. It's just this oasis of greenery in the busy city, and they often have events here as well. So there's a famous flower festival that takes place in the grounds of this park every single year, and it's just a really, really special place. You've got a turtle pond, you've got running water, you've got all the different types of vegetation and trees. It's a lovely, lovely space. And I think when you're choosing somewhere to live, it's important that you have all your shops and services, but that you also have spaces like this as well. And I feel like Villa Comunale is a really, really beautiful place. But it's not the only park. There are other parks in different neighbourhoods in Salerno as well that give you that kind of respite from city life. As we're taking in the beauty of this park, let's talk about where to live in Salerno and where not to. Now, I normally have two main neighbourhoods that I recommend to people, and they are the neighbourhoods of Carmine and Erno, because they are the two neighbourhoods that I lived in when I lived in the city of Salerno itself. The reason I like both of those neighbourhoods is that they have their very own shops and services, but they are also within extremely easy walking distance to the main city centre itself. Carmine is a little bit hillier, so at points, especially in the higher parts of Carmine, you can find that you're climbing quite steep hills. Erno is flatter, but both of them offer you a different ambience and environment to what you get in the city centre, but you're still very, very close to everything that you need, and they're serviced by buses as well. What I would also say though is that you get more for your money in those neighbourhoods. As much as the cost of housing in Salerno has increased even more so in recent years, and it was considered an expensive city even 4 years ago, now it is even more expensive in more prominent places such as the city centre and in newer developments along Mercatello. I will say to you though, those two neighbourhoods, you do get more for your money, and so that's an important consideration. But let's talk about the historical centre, because a lot of people find it quite a charming place to live in Salerno. But I see it from both sides of the coin, because on the one hand, it's incredibly beautiful, very characteristic, and you are close to absolutely everything, including the sea. There are both lower and upper levels, and on the upper levels of the historical centre, you often have panoramic views across all of Salerno, which is absolutely breathtaking. However, on the flip side, it can be quite expensive in the historical centre for obvious reasons, and the buildings are quite old. So if you're purchasing a property here, you have to consider that there may be some refurbishment that you need to do to that building. And also the buildings may not always be serviced with a lift because of their age. Not only that, but the balconies can be quite small as well. And if that's your only form of outdoor space, you have to consider what it would be like in the hot summer months. Now, in the historical centre, you will find an array of shops and restaurants. You've also got to think that the apartments in the historical centre are often directly above those premises. So you've got to consider, if your home were to be above a restaurant or a fishmonger's, how would that impact the ambience of your apartment? Parking is also another major issue because there isn't any parking in the historical centre. It's regulated by the ZTL system, so you would need to have a permit if you wanted to drive down the narrow streets. But also, apart from that, you'll need to pay for the services of a garage or find a permit to park on the street somewhere else. It's not easy. And I think this is probably one of the most difficult parts of living in the historical centre, because parking in Salerno at the best of times can be a challenge. Some other things to think about if you're tempted by the historical centre is the fact that when there are festivals and events in Salerno itself, the historical centre gets extremely busy, most notably during the annual light display Luci di Artista, which occurs kind of every November until February, because that attracts thousands of people from across Italy and internationally, and the streets of the historical centre just become rivers of people. It's so difficult to navigate the historical centre during those moments, so you must think about how that could impact your everyday life. Now, in terms of where not to live, some places that I don't really recommend anymore are Pastina and Torrione. These are further south out of the main centre of Salerno itself. Whilst they were once nice places that I used to frequent, I have heard in recent years that they've gone a bit downhill, and there are more problems now with crime and antisocial behaviour in those neighbourhoods, but also the neighbourhoods of Maraconda and Mercatello. Now, Mercatello is up and coming at the moment. There are a lot of new build properties being built in that place. It's very close to the stadium. The stadium is undergoing a refurbishment programme. Salerno hopes to host the 2032 Euros there. So there's a lot of investment being made into that part of the city. However, it's out of the main centre, so you're not really close, but also you've got to think what it's like to live near a stadium, because I promise you, when we start having football matches and if they host the Euros, that's going to be very, very problematic. So you've got to think long term a little bit with that. You do have a hospital in Salerno as well. You have schools of all different types, including bilingual schools, and you have an array of shops along Corso Vittorio Emanuele, and also nearby shopping centres in Ponte Conagno. So it is a very, very beautiful place to base yourself. There's a train station that can services all of Italy, including Palermo. You have an airport now in Ponte Conagno, which is serviced by a bus link direct from the airport to the train station. So there is a lot happening in Salerno, a lot of investment being made. And for that reason, I think it's definitely a city to consider moving to.